Cool. Uh, today I have Jordan Chigbo with me today. Jordan, if you want to introduce yourself, like where you went to school, what you did, anything like that.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Ryan, for having me on. My name is Jordan Chigbo, and I currently work as a quantitative developer at a hedge fund. I guess to kick things off, where I went to school, I studied in the UK, if you could tell by my accent. I studied at the University of Warwick, and I did my undergrad in electrical and electronic engineering, and then a master's in computer science.
I see, I see. Okay. So, could you tell us more about like your schooling experience from undergrad, why you decided to switch, do electrical engineering, and then why you chose like a master's in computer science?
Sure, that's a good question. Growing up, I've always been interested in computing. I taught myself how to code when I was in year eight. I'm not sure what the US equivalent of that is. Is it grade nine? Perhaps. I think we're like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
This was around the time Minecraft just came out. It was a
Hmm.
brand new game, still in alpha stage, and I started playing it and getting really obsessed. And effectively, I saw that there were a lot of custom game modes, and I was wondering, how are people able to modify the game that it's no longer vanilla? And so I stumbled across some open source server software written in C sharp. And I was like, okay, this looks like my entry point to try and make my own sort of mini game. So I downloaded the code, I forked it from GitHub, and I just started playing around. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was finding some tutorials here and there on YouTube and on the internet. And over time, I was able to tweak the code, build it, run the server, join it, and effectively use the Minecraft game as my console. And I was starting to understand the principles of coding. And iteratively, I was able to build like a mini capture the flag game that I was able to sort of give to the people on the server I used to play with a lot. And I found that being able to build something locally and
Hmm.
give it to someone, effectively deploy it, and have other people on the game enjoying it, just that entire feedback loop was something that became really addictive, like being able to build something that other people can use. And I think that's where I started to like the idea of computer science, at least just furthering my formal education in that. So I studied that in my GCSEs. Again, I'm not sure what the US equivalent is. And when it now came to my A levels, again, not sure what the US equivalent is. I had to pick between further maths, I guess AP maths, and
Hmm.
um, and computer science because of the timetable clash. And I really wanted to do further maths, so I didn't do CS. And so when it now came to applying for university, I was thinking, oh, I don't have an A level in computer science. That's going to hurt my chances of getting into computer science in uni. So I decided to go for engineering because I quite liked um, maths and I quite liked physics, but I didn't want to study either of them, like pure maths or pure physics. I wanted something that sort of married the two. And I found engineering to be a good application of both maths and physics. So I signed up for a 4-year course in electrical and electronic engineering. But I found that over time, I was sorry, I actually first registered for a mechanical engineering course. But in the first year and the first term of the second year, you're actually able to do the same modules as everybody else, regardless of what discipline they pick. So it sort of gives you like a taste of all the different modules that you could, disciplines that you could possibly do. So after a while, I started seeing that I was enjoying the more electrical and electronic modules more. There was a bit of coding involved, a bit of MATLAB, a bit of C. And so I decided to make the switch to electrical and electronic engineering. And so I went through my second year and I went through my third year. And it was now time to consider now doing my fourth year as I was registered for an integrated master's. So this was around the time of COVID, where the world had effectively gone quiet. There was a lot of time to reflect, and I found that I didn't really want to do my fourth year in triple E. I'd like to move to computer science, so I applied. I basically finished a bachelor's and applied for a computer science master's at the same uni at work. And yeah, I go onto the course, and that was that.
I see. Okay. That's great. So at uni, did you do any like internships at your time? Because I know your undergraduate, you did like electrical and electronics engineering. Did you do any like jobs in that space before you started moving into the software space?
No, I didn't actually. So it would have been in the start of my second year of university. There was a careers fair, and I just rocked up to it. And I was seeing a bunch of different companies, and I wasn't too concerned or interested in what I was doing. I sort of pivoted towards the finance industry because I was a young student and I just heard that, finance, investment bank, come work with us and build cool projects, make money,
Yeah.
etc. So I was just very captivated by that. But so yeah, I applied for like spring weeks, etc. And I did get a spring week at a large investment bank. And yeah, that was like my first taste of the financial services industry. And then after that, I did an internship, a summer internship and an investment bank. And that gave me more of like an in-depth, like 10 weeks actually sitting inside a team, working on an actual project with tangible results. So yeah, that's what I was doing my second year of uni. But yeah, I would say that I wasn't really interested in doing or working at an actual engineering firm. It just, like I said, I'm also picked engineering because it allowed me to do some maths and it allowed me to do some physics. So it was purely out of interest. Everything I'm doing has come off.
Yeah, I see. Okay, that makes sense. So your first contact with like the finance space was through that spring internship and stuff like that. So from the spring internship and what were you doing? Like did you prepare for like the investment banking technical interviews or like did you just walk in fresh with just like your engineering knowledge?
Yeah, so I didn't have, if at all, any sort of financial background or exposure prior to that. So, and I think that quite a lot of companies are aware of this, right? They're they're marketing roles to people who are not sure about what they want to do next. There are some people that are very set on getting into the industry, but there are also some people that they realize might have the skills that would help in the industry, but they just don't know about it. So I was definitely in the latter camp. So they're very open to people who don't know much about it. And the spring week is more of an insight week, right? It just allows you to just get an understanding of what goes on in this space. And if you're interested, you can probe more and learn more.
I see. So can you describe like can you tell us more about how you from like your second year in uni to doing masters, like how that progression was like in your career wise. Like I know you did a few internships. How did you go from internships to securing like a full-time job and then switching jobs after that?
Okay, cool. So I did an internship in my second year, and I did a 4 year course, right? So there are some places that you need to be in your penultimate year, so only third years if you're in a 4 year course you can apply. But where I worked, I was able to join in my second year, so I did an internship there. I did have a return offer, an opportunity to come back, but when I was looking for grad jobs, I was sort of just evaluating what all of my options are. And I understood that by having an internship, having that experience, there's quite a few more firms that I would now be open or privy to, especially quite a lot of buy-side firms and yeah, quant trading firms, proprietary trading firms. They're quite interested in people who have had some exposure in the industry because ideally they want their new starters to hit the ground running and just have a bit of an exposure, what it's like to work in a professional environment. Of course, coming in as an entry level, your job is to just learn. You're not an expert or senior in any way, and no one expects you to be. But at least some demonstrable interest or desire to get into the industry, which previous experience can demonstrate, is really key. So I decided to sort of key into that. So it was after that I now landed a role as a junior software engineer at a prop trading energy firm based in London.
See, okay. Um, well, let's get to like your current job. Could you tell us more about like what you do on the job, like how your day to day is, and then we'll ask more questions from there.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, I work as a quant dev at a hedge fund, and we primarily trade commodities, mainly paper. So I work quite closely with some of the analysts and the traders. They have different strategies, different trading algos that they will come up with let me say, a prototype of. And my job is to effectively take their prototypes, build it into something that's a bit more robust, perhaps integrate it into the ecosystem or the trading system that we have I do quite a lot of data engineering work, so building out ingestion pipelines. The commodities world is very data driven and increasingly data driven, let me say. And so there's quite a demand and need for new data sets to be onboarded, etc. So I do quite a lot of that work as well. And I do some visualization as well. So sometimes I'm working with either Dash or doing a bit of React.
Okay, I see. So are you able to share any of like the projects you worked on? I know it's like, you can't really talk about stuff like that, or I understand like you said you did some research on your job as a dev. Normally we see devs just building like the software and stuff, but you said you did some research. You go hand in hand with the quant researchers. Can you talk to us more about that?
Yeah, so I'm not able to share, the specific projects that we work
Yeah.
on. But one thing I found as a developer, in order to make me more efficient and useful at my job, is to just trying to put myself in the shoes of the stakeholders, right? The traders and the researchers on the desk. So trying to understand exactly what their model. So I work with quite a bit of like, time series forecasting, for example. So trying to understand some of the statistical models that they use, doing some learning on the maths behind that does help me get a bit more insight into what they're trying to achieve.
Okay. And would you say as a dev, your job isn't as like on the line compared to like a trader who is like everything's based off like their profit and losses and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean the way to assess performance is different, right, for a trader and a developer. Of course, with a trader, the main metric is going to be P&L,
Mm,
but developers as well. One thing is being able to tend to tickets and projects quickly, but also producing robust um, code as well, because you'll find that most people in this industry are able to code. They are able to write code, but sometimes traders and analysts might not have as much time to spend time writing very production level code, which is why you now onboard engineers who have that traditional computer science background and they can provide that perspective and that expertise. So you need to sort of justify why you being a developer is making a tangible impact to the desk, to the team that you're working on.
for sure, for sure. So a developer is mainly like the guy on the back end that's really assisting the people coming up with these models and kind of taking the models and making it something like tangible and executable for like in the trades and stuff like that. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, correct. Like it might be taking like a prototype idea or a quick script or just something that the either the analysts or the researchers come up with and integrating that into something more robust and productionized. And
Hmm.
typically, those people don't have as much time because they're focused on generating new strategies, new ideas that you now take that on board with your software engineering background. Like I'd like to say a quant developer is effectively a highly specialized software engineer. So we still have that background, at least should have that background, and we just apply it in this quant finance setting.
I see, I see. So I assume you work with many different languages. Can you tell us about some of the different languages you use and what do you use them for on the job?
Sure. So in my internship, I worked with C++ because I was working on a low latency order execution platform. But in my current job, that's more research focused. I'm mainly working with Python. I deal with a lot of data as well, so SQL. In terms of deployment, I'm working with Terraform, and I use quite a bit of AWS for cloud deployments.
Right, I see. Yeah, so when you were learning these languages, I assume you didn't like know them beforehand. You started learning them on the job and getting more like familiarized with them and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Like I said, I studied GCSE computer science, so I touched on Python a bit. And in the internship where I was writing C++, the tests were written in Python, so I had direct experience with that before. C++ I hadn't worked with prior, so there was a bit of a learning curve during the internship for that. Um, I think what else? Yeah, like I said, Python I had already come across. So when I now started using it in my current job and the job just before this, I was already well versed in that.
I see. So if you were to like recommend a starter language, because a lot of the people that are going to be watching are like they aspire to become someone in like the devs, in a quant or a software engineer, if you had to suggest like a language for many of these people, like what would you suggest?
I'd say Python. It's, in my opinion, probably the most straightforward language to pick up. I like how readable Python is. I like that I won't say it's like writing pseudocode, but it's just much more readable. And you can add typing as well to Python, where you can now start to understand, um, yeah, more things about typing where you would typically see that in languages like Java, C Sharp, C++, etc. I think that it has a very wide ecosystem, particularly for data science applications. Um, yeah, there's quite a lot of beginner resources online for it as well. So I would say Python is quite a solid um, language to begin with. I know that in quite a few computer science courses, they also teach Java as well. So if you're looking for another language, Python and Java are quite good starters.
Great, great. I assume you did some of your own projects before moving on into like the career side. I know you said you did a lot of those Minecraft games. Did you do any other projects with like that helped you learn different languages or different tools?
Yeah, so outside of my day job, I actually do freelancing. I'm a mobile app developer. So prior to that, I hadn't really worked with front end much. I was always more of a back end guy. I would look at HTML, I'd look at CSS and JavaScript and just think, I don't want to do this. I don't want to work with this. But I increasingly found that I'm someone that enjoys being able to build. And if there's something I need to learn how to use in order to build, then I have no choice but to learn it. So I found that building mobile apps was a really good way for me to get better with my front end skills. And I was also able to, yeah, pick up React Native, which is a JavaScript platform, sorry, JavaScript framework. And because of that, I was also able to learn React, which is more or less a cousin of React Native. So yeah, quite a lot of mobile app development I do outside of that.
For sure. What are some current like apps you're working on if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, sure. So I'm currently working on a beautician platform, which is effectively like, I'm not sure if in the US you have an app called TaskRabbit.
I don't think so. I have not used that.
It's like a gig economy. I know there's one that exists in America. I just don't remember the name, but it's like a gig economy app where you can say I need XYZ job done, and then
Mm,
people more or less bid on that job. You know, say for example, you needed someone to plaster your wall. You can say, someone please come plaster my wall this weekend. And you get people in the neighborhood who are interested in doing that. You can speak with them, agree on a price, you send a deposit. So I'm basically doing that, but specifically for the beauty industry. So think about
oh, okay. I see.
makeup, nails, all types of cosmetics. So currently working on that. I'm also working on a app called Sereniscape, which allows parents to effectively teach their children mindfulness techniques because especially in this day and age, you know, lots of children are exposed to social media from a very young age, and you start to question like um, how much mindfulness they're actually working on. You know, parents might be busy at work, and when they come back, they're tired, so they just give their kid the iPad. But this is a way to allow parents and children to sit down, speak about what the child has been going through during the day, and you now feed. This is basically a big ChatGPT wrapper. You now feed sort of this information back into ChatGPT and it spits out a story that sort of has mindfulness elements baked into it. And that will over time help the child become more mindful and aware rather than in this fast-paced lifestyle that is so common.
Yeah, for sure. Those are two really great ideas. Like the first you were talking about the gig economy. I have heard of something like that. Are you trying to target like local people within your area, like a Craigslist or something like that, like a marketplace for the area?
Yeah, yeah, more like that. And with this, because there's specific reasons why I've targeted the hair and beauty industry. So there are quite a few mishaps that I feel that a dedicated platform in this space would make it quite a tangible idea. So yeah, it is quite locally driven, but it's of course a platform that could work nationally and hopefully
Mm.
internationally.
Yeah, for sure. I know a bunch of in the States, a bunch of people do a lot of like looking for hair and beauty stuff through like Instagram. Barbers will connect with people through Instagram. If there was like a platform for that, that would be great. That would be something like very interesting. Um, and you said this other app you're doing like the for the children's, it's you're using like the Chat GPT to kind of help create the responses you would need from the given prompt. Is that what you mean?
Correct. Yeah. So say you were to speak to a child and say, how was your day? What did you find difficult about the day? Just questions where you're probing and trying to understand what that child has faced or experienced, anything they found challenging, anything they really enjoyed. Taking those inputs and now building a story on the back of that that has some mindfulness techniques baked into it. So at points there could be questions that the child is now asked. They can now respond as either in text, or if it's nighttime and they just want to speak, there's a voice recording option where they can just speak. And this now will build a journal over time, which the parent and child can review.
Okay, so it does log the data and you can look back on like the past logged data. Do you do anything with the data? Are you able to do you personalize it or do you plan on like personalizing using like past data to see like growth or anything like that?
So that is definitely a feature I thought about. Right now, it's more a case of just building the MVP. So I'm trying to keep it very like bare bones and to the point for now. But I thought about, analytics and personalization and how I could potentially weave in things like that in the future. So definitely something I'm considering.
For
With
sure.
the parents' consent, of course, as a I don't
Yeah. Yes, of
want
course. That's the big talk, especially in the States with Facebook and all that, all the privacy concerns, right?
exactly.
Yeah. So you do a full-time job and you have a lot of like projects you're doing on the side. How well are you balancing like the work life? Like how well is that going for you, like the work life balance?
Yeah, that's a good question. Usually when I speak to people and I let them know about the different things I'm working on, they're like, "Do you sleep?" I'm like, "Yeah, I still get my 7 hours in. Don't worry." Number one, I'm an early riser. Usually by 5:55, I'm out of my bed, and I find that after my morning routine, I like to get in maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours of just focused work. Um, where I have no distractions, and that's usually the time wherever work requires like the most amount of just mental thinking I'll put in then. So that's yeah, max 2 hours. After that, I would then go to work, and between say 8:30 to 5:30 to 6 p.m. I'm working, right? After that, I will come back and rest for a bit. And then I will get to doing whatever I'm doing in the evening. If it's either making content, if it's either working on more app development. But I also do exercise quite a bit. I'm heavily into boxing and running. Currently, I'm training for a half marathon, so less boxing, more running. So sometimes in the morning, instead I will run instead of doing like an app development session. But I usually I split my day into three parts, such like for my day job, and then after my day job, and I sort of like mix and match. Uh, so I like to think I'm quite an organized person. I keep my calendar. Literally have my notepad that anything I need to jot down. Looks empty,
Uh,
but it's a brand new page. Um, but yeah, anything I need to jot down, I do it there, and I just try not to lose track of anything. I try not to rely on my memory so that I don't accidentally forget something. Anything I think, I just note it down so there's a record.
yeah, that's definitely a good tip for especially all the uni students and myself going into my first year of undergrad. Um, Definitely writing stuff down instead of like back in high school, I would just rely on my head. But now, like you have a life, responsibilities start piling up. Definitely, like writing tasks down would definitely be a something that is beneficial for me.
Agree.
Um, so so let's get into like advice because I plan on the audience a lot of being like as I said, aspiring quants, software engineers, and many students. Um, Let's start off with advice for like school. Do you have any advice for people that are still in school, like for like schoolwork related wise?
Um, my advice would be make the most out of the resources you have. Um, I would imagine, your teachers want to see you do as good as possible. So feel free to, there's some people in a class, they won't say that they're stuck on something because they feel they might be embarrassed. But there's something that I learned from someone I used to work with, and they said that you can ask a dumb question and look dumb for a minute, or never ask that question at all and be dumb effectively for a lifetime. So it's like, don't be afraid of looking silly if you need to ask a question that's going to help you and benefit you. So definitely, be humble in terms of accepting what you don't know. Be open to learning as well. It's okay to look at something and be, where do I even start? What am I doing? But
Yeah,
you realize that maybe this is like fairly obvious, but you realize that you don't know something until you do. So it's like if you don't know something, that's okay. If someone wrote it, it's in front of you, therefore it's something that you can learn and just go about trying to learn that. You can read textbooks, you can speak to your teachers, you can find there's a lot of content online, there's a lot of YouTube, especially for maths. You have people like StatQuest, you have Free Blue, One Brown just to get the intuition behind things and just building that like mental muscle of curiosity and interest and just persistence in trying to understand something will take you very far.
I see, I see. When you're in school, how would you network? I know you said there were a lot of career fairs. How were you able to find a lot of the opportunities that you're able to get?
Yeah, so my university are quite good with their career opportunities, especially. There are a lot of different platforms and websites as well. I'm not sure how many of these are in the US, but in the UK at least, there's like Grad Cracker, there's Bright Network, there's SEO London. There's a bunch of different platforms that you can find out more job opportunities about. There's also websites like Glassdoor. There's levels the FYI. I mean that's more salary focused, but at least hearing about different jobs and companies that exist, that's a place to find such places. There's of course e-financial careers, there's Wall Street Oasis, there's Team
Mhm.
Blind. So many different platforms that you can just sort of get an exposure to firms from.
For sure, for sure. Um, Next, advice on people trying to get better at the computer science world and getting better with like maths. I know there's a lot of resources online you said to, learn the YouTube videos and all of that. Any projects you might recommend for someone that's trying to do in the quant finance space? I know you talked a lot about this on your TikTok, so I don't want to be repetitive, but I just wanted to do it for if anyone's listening.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I hope you won't mind the shameless plug that I'm about to do here, but I have a TikTok page where I talk a bit about quant and tech, career advice, etc. And yeah, a lot of the time I get a question of, what type of project should I be doing to demonstrate that I'm interested to put on my CV? And like I said a bit earlier in this podcast, like no employer is expecting you to be some expert, some professional, but being able to show that you understand a standard concept, like taking the formula to calculate the price of an option, um, taking that formula and then building some sort of wrapper around that. So you can build a front end that just has some inputs, puts that into the formula, spits out the output, and you might have like a cool um, matplotlib diagram that now demonstrates a heat map or something. You could also build um, maybe a mock trading engine, a mock order book, and simulate orders going in. Build some unit tests around that. I think one thing is the idea. Um, that you're trying to create, the project you're trying to create, but being able to consider production aspects of it, like data validation. There's language packages on Python called like Pydantic, for example, where you can do data validation. Writing unit tests, thinking about where you're going to deploy this. Is there a way you could use the free tier of AWS to deploy what you've written? Um, do you need to store any data in a SQL server, for example? Like if you can sort of attach all of these extra components and show that you have an awareness for building an actual production stage project, I think that could be really advantageous. Um, but yeah, starting off with the basics of just say some kind of formula, some kind of result, maybe even just doing a data analysis project in a Jupyter notebook or completing some Kaggle competitions can give you exposure to the type of skills you would need in this industry.
For sure, I see. So when you talk about like making it production, like implementing it into production line, you like I've done many projects on my own that are like through my Jupyter notebook or my editor. But are you trying to say like so that other people can use it and like you package it in a way that other people can use it, have data stored? Because most of my data is all stored like locally. Is that so? If you could elaborate more on that.
That's exactly it, right? Like a lot of us, we would write quick scripts. Say we're working on an assignment, we just write a script locally, get the results from that, put that into your report or something, and now submit that PDF, say, to your school platform. But productionizing it is exactly like thinking about where you're going to deploy it. So that data, you might be reading it from some CSV file that you have stored locally, but perhaps you now want to keep this in AWS S3. You want to keep this in the S3 bucket and read the data from there. So just thinking about how you can, yeah, productionize this, have this in the cloud. Because when you're working an actual role, an actual job, you'll find that you don't want to have all of your processes running locally, as that can become a pretty big concern.
I see. Yeah, for sure. Running all the stuff locally, sometimes like there's just a whole bunch of mumbo jumbo on the page for myself and like my machine gets, like it's just overclocked and whatnot. Um
Yeah.
but
Imagine just pouring a glass of water on that computer by accident.
yeah,
That's a
yes,
lot
for
of
sure, for
critical
sure.
processes that just go down the drain.
Yeah, because personally I've done like many projects, but I've never dealt with like AWS or anything like storing that into like a database. So definitely that's something I would look in like I'm going to be looking into after this talk. Is there any other advice you would like to tell people in any sector like maybe like personally like you're talking about the Serenity app like gratitude or anything like that?
I would say, it's all well and good building these hard skills, being like super technical, having a good technical proficiency, but don't forget to be human. Don't forget about your soft skills. Don't forget that you're going to be working with actual people and you want to be getting along with these people. They'll be your colleagues. You'll be working next to them several hours a day. So, have interest outside of your course. Like I said, I'm quite into sports. If I'm not doing anything tech related, I'm literally either thinking about boxing or running or keeping up to date with the Olympics. That's been pretty interesting. Hiking is what I'm interested in. So just have something that you find interesting and you're happy to bring to the table and talk about. And you'll just find that pursuing these experiences, these interests, as as hard as you're um, pursuing your educational and your career interests, you'll find that just doing all of that makes you a more well-rounded person, and you'll just grow, I'd say, professionally and personally a lot quicker.
For sure, that's great. Remembering to grow as a person at the same time as you grow like academically, yeah, that's amazing. Um, but our meeting time is ending soon. So I just want to thank you again for hopping on. I really appreciate it. You're going to be the first person on our podcast, and I really appreciate that. So to start get it growing. Yeah, and if you want to plug your TikTok again, please go ahead because I that's where I found you from. I found many of your TikToks very insightful and very useful. So please go ahead and do that.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that, Ryan. Thanks a lot for having me on again. Really enjoyed this conversation with you and speaking to you, and hopefully the viewers, your audience will be find what at least some of what I've said valuable. So yeah, thanks a lot. In terms of where to find me, my TikTok is at jordan.dev. Um, my name is Jordan Chigbo, so you can find me on LinkedIn. And yeah, those are pretty much the only two platforms I use. So yeah, thanks a lot again.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. So thank you everyone for listening. I'm going to end the recording now.
Let's kick off.
Okay.